Hi guys, and welcome to the live manuscript feedback thing. Hopefully everything's working, because we all know I talk about it all the time that technology is not normally my friend. And I was just trying at the very last second to download something so that I could show you guys the new class that we're doing here. So I'm going to download that and pop that up here so that you have it, because there is an early bird special if you are not already a part of the class. And if you're here for feedback, if you were one of the people that submitted feedback, let me know so that I can pick somebody to go first. So let me put the little promo thing up there. I added a class on how to write a romance novel because I've done a lot of those. And if you sign up as an early bird between here and next Wednesday, you get 10% off of the class. It is 12 lessons that are self-paced, and hopefully the QR code and everything works for you guys. Let me know if it doesn't. It's 12 lessons that are self-paced. Nice to see you, Joe. 12 lessons that are self-paced and evergreen available. So for as long as the lessons exist, which I don't see why I would ever take them down, they will be yours. So you can go in and watch the videos or read the handouts or download them or whatever you want. Let me make that a little bit smaller. So if you go in and you register for the course, use code EARLYBIRD and you can get 10% off between here and Wednesday, which is when the whole course will go live, and you'll be able to get it. Hi, Martha and Misty Writer and Cheryl. Nice to see you guys. Well, Joe was the first one here. If you want to be the first guinea pig, Joe, let me know, because I will bring up my thing, share my screen, which I always forget how I'm supposed to do that. Share screen. Hi, Paul. Nice to see you here. I've got to figure out which window is Joe's, because I did open it. Okay, nice to see you, Huffamo and Paul and everybody else. And you know what? I've already forgotten your name, Fitra. Sorry. I'm so sorry. And Joe is ready for me to go and share his pages. So before I do this, don't anybody cry. It is hard to get feedback. I completely understand that, because I have been there myself a million times. And it's really all about helping you leapfrog past 10 books in 8 years. And I'm sorry if there's a little whine. My computer is not meant for video editing, and sometimes it is just overwhelmed by what I do. Anyways, I know how overwhelming it can be to get the feedback, and I just want to save you guys the 250 rejections that I talked about on the channel today and all of that stuff. Hey, Tristan, nice to see you here. Well, today is a unique live stream. This is our bi-weekly manuscript feedback, where I give people some feedback on their pages. Okay, so let me put Joe's up there. Okay, hopefully everybody can see it, because I see a different screen than you guys do. So do you, oh, no, I did not add to stage. There we go. There is Joe's pages. Okay. And yay, Paul, glad you got your Wi-Fi fixed. And Martha and Cozy Mystery Writer, well, thank you. Yes, a New York Times bestselling author is usually pretty helpful. All right, I wish I had had that when I was there. Okay, so let me bring this up a little bit more so you guys can see this. So Joe is writing a speculative fiction romance suspense thriller. And I loved the whole thing with the beast, but I think you need to set it up a little bit more in the beginning. I thought you had a really picturesque, beautiful, is my hair over my microphone probably. I think you had a really picturesque, beautiful way of writing, Joe. And I just think that it needed a little bit more to make the beast thing at least a foreshadow that it's going to come up. So, you've got Cade facing west on the rimrock, and I loved the visual that you had of the canyon. I think you could break it up just a little bit more. The warm, dusty breeze, because, you did talk about the dust in other places. The amber land, so you can see the color of the prairie, because you got to think about people that don't live there. What are they going to think? What are they going to notice? What is going to transport them to this place? And then kind of breaking these lines up a little bit, because they were really, really long. Spreading out like a fugitive reaching for Mexico is more of a vivid image. That's what I talk about with showing versus telling. A fugitive reaching for Mexico is a very vivid image rather than heading for Mexico. He caught the soft, earthy sense of the prairie grass. I don't actually know how any of these things smell, so I kind of made it up as I went along. Musky odors is white-tailed deer, axis deer, and the African velds that had escaped from the exotic game ranch. So you really, because you and I, Joe, know that he is a beast / man, he's going to notice the scents a lot more and process them a little bit more. The reader doesn't know that yet, but just by adding a little bit more vividness to the scents, you can really show what he is noticing as opposed to an ordinary person. It talks, and then I think you really need to add, like I said, that part about the beast. And this is where I added some stuff and just made it up because it's not me. This is your book, so you can take it or leave it, whatever you want. Let's show a little bit of his conflict and his motivation and what's going on inside of him. The urge to rise, to hunt, rumbled beneath his consciousness. It drove him like the sight of wine drove an alcoholic to reach for a corkscrew. Because then you can liken it to something that people who are not beast / men will understand. So like, that drive to have a glass of wine when you see one on TV. His muscles tensed, his grip on the chair tightened. That's his reaction. Remember, we talk about that a lot in videos. You have an action and then you have a reaction to it. And his reaction to his urge to want to stand up is to grab onto his chair. Resistance, that was the key. Now we know in our head that he's trying to battle this beast thing. The reader doesn't know that. The reader's like, what is he resisting? What is this about? And when you set those lines apart, it just drives up that suspense just a little bit more. But the world taunted him. So you can see with the word taunt that this is a battle for him. With the scent of smaller creatures, and let's be specific, mice, owls, something else. I have no idea what, lives in that area. And so part of what I'm doing with these, breaking out these lines, is adding suspense and tension to the plot because it's like a heartbeat. Resistance, the world taunted him. And then another scent, a new scent. You can feel his heartbeat, right? Like, what's that? What's that? Sort of like the way that an animal would breathe too, right? A lot of what you do with writing is not just about the words you choose. It's about how you put them on the page. And let me go down because I have to go back and forth between these two things to do this. He rose in his chair, his nostrils expanding, drawing in deep, the whisper of fur against prairie grass. And the reason why I did that is because he is going to be able to hear better too. Like dogs and cats and animals can hear way better than humans can. So he would also hear the whisper of fur against the prairie grass, the soft patting of paws, even though in human life we wouldn't be able to hear a cougar going through the grass, but he would. The sharp tang of hunger, which is the hunger of the cougar. But the cool thing is when you just kind of leave that without naming the cougar, it could also mean his hunger. It's like an echo of what he's feeling, right? You're doing so much more when you add these other kinds of words. So it's not just the cougar, it's a lot of the battle inside himself. So that's what I really wanted you to bring out in here. You had some great things in there before. You just needed to bring it out just a little bit more with a little bit more of of showing, basically. Okay. And yes, Paul, I'm going to drop the link in there. You only submit 200 words, not pages, because I only have so many hours in my day. And I look at them ahead of time. So if you submit it right now, I am not going to I'm not going to look at it right now. I don't have that kind of time to just pop in and do it. And I had a lot of submissions, by the way, for this week. So if I don't get to yours, that will be why. But the good thing is to submit it ahead of time, and you've got to fill out a little bit about what the book is so that I know, so I can give appropriate advice. And also I will do whatever I can within the time that I have. So we're only going to go for an hour, so there's only so much that I can get through. Okay, and yes, Joe, bringing out that he's lonely is another thing you could do in that. Maybe you could add like the cry of an owl, or I don't know if there's wolves there. I'm really bad with geography, but if there was like a cry of a wolf or something that could also be a metaphor for how he's feeling without having to say he's lonely, that would be another great thing to do. After this is over, I have to go back through the responses you guys put in, but I will email you the feedback that I did. But it has to be after this is over because I cannot do 5 other things at one time. I may be able to multitask in my head, but in real life, not so much. And yes, Joe, coyotes would be great. That lonely call of a coyote would be really, really good to add in so that, you can see that he sort of relates to that, even if he doesn't. Okay. All right, now I'm going to put the course back up because there you go. Would you fill this out, zoom in more on revision? In revision, half a mo, clarify what you mean by that. You mean kind of layering? That's what I was just talking about to somebody on the comments on the channel, is all of this layering happens as you're revising. One of the things that I do, in the revision series that's on the channel, I talk about the 3 major revisions that I do, but as I get back into the book, because I work, in between on other things that aren't my book, when I go to get back into the book later today, I'm going to reread the scene that I wrote before so I can kind of get back into that mindset. And I will do little bits of layering, like what I just did here for Joe, little bits in between to just kind of beef it up a little bit. Every single pass of going through a sentence, I look for ways to kind of beef it up a little bit more and add more. Plus, I also know more about the character the further along I go. And it better to layer in later, yes, if that works for you. Not everybody does it that way. Like Stephen King talks about how he cuts 10%. I actually write lean in the beginning and then I layer as I go. Because really I'm just trying to get the framework down, and then I'm adding the wallpaper and the carpeting and the countertops and all of that, because I really want to kind of get the structure down and then go through. And you're very welcome, Joe. Okay. Who else was here that did pages? Martha, you did pages too, right? Do you want to go with yours? I can put yours up next. So yes, if you want to get more on that in terms of writing a romance, definitely sign up for the course. Let me pull up Martha's. There we go. If you're ready, Martha, emotionally prepared, then I can go ahead and do yours. Okay. Share screen. There we go. Okay. So Martha has a like a sort of Eat, Pray, Love type story here, which I really like because I love that kind of story in general. But, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay, it's an Eat, Pray, Love type story, which I really like, and I thought that was a great idea, but I think you need a little bit more setup because I was super confused. I read that first line several times to try to figure out exactly where you were going. I get it, but it didn't come through. Like, if you have to have the reader read it more than once, then they're going to put the book down because they're going to be like, wait, I don't get it. Because remember, they're distracted by 7 million other things during the day. Okay, so let's show Greece a little bit more because it's such a beautiful place, and you can show the place that she has gone to get away from everything, and then that showing of what Greece is like and how beautiful it is can be a great juxtaposition against her own inner self and her outer self that you build up to in a little bit. So I added a couple lines about the stone walkway leading along the shops shown white and clean under a cloudless sky. I passed bright blue and white awnings, yellow cafe tables, happy people chatting and drinking coffee from tiny porcelain cups. So all of this is in direct opposition to what's going on inside of her, but you didn't have to tell it, you just show it. And then as I turned the corner so that we can see how this vision, this reflection happens, because otherwise I didn't get it. Tired, frumpy woman with gray roots that would offend all of womankind, and not necessarily all of. I toyed with rewording that because there are a lot of women that are just lovely that go all gray, that maybe would have offended anyone under 30 or something like that. Maybe might have been a better way to word it. Stared back at me. The sight in the shop window, because you needed to clarify that, stopped me with a jolt. One of the other little tricks of the trade is to end with a more powerful word. So jolt is more powerful because it's literally, if you end on that word, it's like oof, as opposed to ending the sentence on shop window. You see the difference between stop me with a jolt, stop me with a jolt at the shop window. It just sort of kind of peters out the sentence. So there's, like I said, lots of tricks of the trade. Then you've got to clarify that tired and frumpy woman was me. So we want the reader to be able to see that and to get it right there. And yes, Tristan, I do agree that the people that submit are super brave because it is a lot to do that. Then I like that she's, saying, when did I become this? I'm 45. And I think you need to pick a tense because sometimes you're present tense, sometimes you're past tense. I picked past because I just wanted to. In Greece, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And if you add that goes back to that juxtaposition with the, white, clean sidewalks and everything. I'd escape my life, my job, my everything, because surely here I would feel something like freedom, so that now you have established her goal pretty clearly, because it wasn't super clear. And by emphasizing it here, I thought, surely here I would feel something like freedom. You're kind of setting up the reader for what's going to be coming, that it's not quite what she expected it to be right there. And then I think we need to submit, I'm reading questions at the same time. I think we need to establish right away that her brother is kind of this ball and chain, because you had that in the synopsis of the piece, but I didn't really feel it in the scene there. So instead, with freedom, right? So now we've got another juxtaposition, which, you know, is like mirror images of the two different things that she wants. She wants freedom. Instead, I saw the 6'1" ball and chain I dragged along with me standing in front of the coffee, and I capitalized coffee shop because I figure you should name it. So then you get right to her brother, but it's also a hook, because we don't know who the 6'1" ball and chain is. Is it her husband? Because that's what you would expect, right? Because that's what people often call their spouses. But it turns, you're going to surprise the reader a little bit, and it's her brother, right? Olivia Ovie yelled. He dashed through the crowd, waving his hands like those flailing tube men you see at car dealerships. I loved that imagery that you had there, because it's just very vivid and you really get it. And then let's kind of really establish my 60-year-old brother, my partner in crime, actually my partner in bravery. So now you're kind of making it clear, because you had said that she needed him to go along with her. So let's just make it a little bit clearer. He's her brother, he's her partner in crime, and her partner in bravery, because she'd been too afraid to go on this trip alone. And that's what I'm assuming from what I have read in your synopsis and in your paragraph there as well, so that it really becomes a little bit clearer. And then you can get into Elias, because Elias is the least important person in this, right? Because he's gone. So we really want to make it clear with Ovie. So I wanted to blame Elias for how badly this trip was going. Elias, the one who left me to find himself a cliche in all its forms. So I think you just need to clarify that just a little bit more. Some of this is just kind of like making it clearer, which was, I think, one of the questions you asked me in terms of what you wanted to learn. This trip was supposed to be my Under the Tuscan Sun, Eat, Pray, Love, Find My Own Damn Self trip to self-discovery. I loved that. I loved that whole line that you had in there. I didn't change anything of it. But let's add the conflict, because remember, conflict on every single page. So this is what she's here for. This is her goal. But here's some conflict. The truth was, I didn't know how the hell to do any of that. Because I think that most women at that age, we're supposed to find ourselves. You have no idea how to do that. And then let's show Ovie just a little bit more. He was waving and sputtering still, right? He was still waving and sputtering, a barrage of questions that ended with a flurry of words. And in your version, she didn't really know what he said, but I think that in real life you would. And let's just show his flurry of words. Let's just show his barrage of questions. How do we get to the hotel? Where is it? Is it big? Is it small? And then she can just think, I was already exhausted. So this was supposed to be her big moment, and boom, we end with conflict again. So you can show Ovie's character without telling the reader that he's just asking all kinds of questions and he's a pain in the butt. Show him being a pain in the butt and show the conflict. So her conflict is here in this. I was already exhausted. It's conflict in I don't know how to do any of this. It's conflict in being too afraid to do it. It's conflict in her brother. It's lots and lots of conflict, because that's what keeps the tension going. Paul submitted outline drafted from it, but the draft is 7,000 words so far. So the whole reason why I only let you guys submit 200 words, 200 pages, man, that would be a heck of a manuscript feedback session. The 200 words is to teach you that every single word in your book counts. Every single word. You need to make every single word count. So you can have 7,000 words. I'm not saying you have 7,000 words, Paul, but somebody could have 7,000 words that aren't going anywhere, that aren't moving the plot forward. Every single solitary word needs to move that plot forward, because the reader is giving you the most valuable thing in their lives, which is their time, and you cannot waste it. So it needs to really be strong and really be layered, like Fitra was saying, with like a lasagna. You absolutely want to put those layers in. That's what creates memorable writing. And so giving you guys only 200 words is really teaching you to hone in on those 200 words. And I've been teaching for 30 years, and my limit in my classes is normally 175 words. I was generous in the manuscript feedback with 200. And I have heard complaints for 30 years that that's not enough words. I can't tell you, but I need to tell you in that. But you will see in these little snippets that you absolutely can do it in 200 words. You absolutely can get your reader hooked. I want to know about Joe's beast man. I want to know more about him. I want to know more about what happens on Martha's trip in 200 words. That's what you're trying to get across. Okay. And yes, cozy mystery writer. A lot of people write really crappy stuff in the first couple paragraphs. A lot of times it's kind of like you got to get it out, you know. You can teach yourself to write better by teaching yourself to speak better and to write better emails, to write better Facebook posts. All of these different things can actually help you. When I had to switch my book, which is the one that I think I talked about in today's video, switch my book from a deep, dark, angsty, suspensey, darky book to a romantic comedy, I had to teach myself how to be funny because I had no idea how to tell a joke. And so I practiced in my emails, in my Facebook posts, and I don't think Facebook app existed then, but in my emails and everything else that I wrote, and in the way that I delivered a story. So I would think about the funny story that I was going to tell in my head, and I would fine tune it to really get that little story down and pat. And I had something really funny happen to me at that same time, where my son had a 5th birthday party, I think, where I had hired a pony that could give rides to the little boys, and a llama, because there was like 22 little boys coming to his party. It was a whole petting zoo and a pony and a llama that they could ride. And the lady called me and she's like, we're going to be late because the llama escaped from his pen and he mounted the pony and he won't get off, and the chinchilla got loose and the rabbit's running around. And so I practiced that story when I was telling my friends to get the timing down right, to really get it to be funny, and talking about like the fainting goat. Now my son is 27. So this is a long time ago, but you know, the fainting goat is up with his little paws, his hooves in the air. And so I really practiced on that story, and I honed it in my email so that I could teach myself to be funny on little things. It has influenced my speaking. When I go and speak somewhere and I do a speech, it makes it so that I can deliver lines a little bit better. It's a little bit harder on like something like this that's more impromptu. I'm trying to manage questions and screens and all of that at the same time. But when I deliver a speech and all of those other things, practicing in every aspect of my life has helped a lot. So you can totally do that however you want to kind of increase that writing skill. And Elizabeth, good to see you here, because you submitted, I think, right? No, there's more. Oh, yes, Elizabeth did. So, okay. So, Elizabeth, if you're here, do you want to go next? Because I already did Martha's and Joe's. So, dying is easy, comedy is hard is supposedly a deathbed quote for Edmund Gwen. Yeah, probably, because comedy is very much about timing and delivery and the word choice that you make and everything else. So, when you're trying to tell a joke or something, absolutely practice and practice and practice and practice. Same thing with show, not tell, and all of these other skills. Okay, so Elizabeth is ready to go. All right, let me find yours. And of course, it's not the one that's coming straight up. There we go. Okay. All right, so you've got a new adult sci-fi, which I liked. I liked the young girl, but I think that her goal needs to be a little bit clearer. Now, your question was, is this a strong enough beginning? Now, let me say that I really did. Oh, I forgot to put it on the stage. Sorry. Your question was, is it a strong enough beginning? I really liked what you were doing here, but it wasn't super clear, kind of like what I was saying to Martha and to Joe. Like, it really wasn't super clear what was happening. And so you needed to set up more of a hook and a little bit more conflict and a little bit more suspense to get the reader really invested. Remember, this is your first meeting with the reader. It's your first impression, and first impressions, you don't get a second one. So you really have to do a lot of work with that. I once sat in a thing, and I think I've told you guys this before. I once sat in a late night session at a writer's conference with an agent who said, I know in 3 sentences if I want to read that book or not. 3 sentences. I was stunned. I went home and really, really worked on my first 3 sentences. But over the years that I have been coaching authors and working with them one-on-one and teaching classes and all of that, I have seen that, yes, you absolutely know in 3 sentences if you want to read this book, because it's so important to get those first 3 sentences right. Okay, so let's delve a little bit deeper into here. Okay, so if you can set up a hook like it had never happened like this before on the first line, first page, because I'm assuming, because you asked me if this was the beginning, that this was your very first line, it had never happened like this before, then you can get into what's going on in the dream. That allows the reader to be like, okay, what had never happened before? Then let's kind of see, I want you to show Bastian. I want you to show the bruise. So I stared at him, an angry red bruise already morphing into a dark purple marred the corner of his left eye. What did this mean? What had changed? So now the reader's already like, okay, who is Bastian? Why does he have a bruise? What is going on? Or was I imagining it all? Because she is dreaming. And so you want to kind of establish that for the reader. I'm not a huge fan of dreams in general, to hear about other people's dreams or read about dreams, but I understand that that is a major part of your plot. So let's make sure that we really establish that conflict of the fact that this is a dream. We just watched, I watched the TV Glow, or I saw the TV Glow. It was the weirdest show ever. It was all sort of a dream, kind of not. I'm not really sure what was going on in that. Okay. But let's show her, you've got it already. I like this. I reached up to touch it, but he caught my wrist before my fingers grazed his skin. I like that. But let's set up some conflict. It's nothing he said, but his brown eyes flashed with anger and fear. So you draw that word out a little bit because she's wondering what's going on with him here. And again, you've got to have this contrast and conflict between what is going on in her head and whether this is real. This is very important. And she would be thinking, was any of it important? It's a dream, wasn't it? A part of my subconscious warned me to pay attention, not to look away, not to will myself awake, so that the reader's getting the message that this is a dream, but she has an inner battle about whether or not she should be paying attention. And then I think you kind of combined his actions and his words, and it kind of swooshed together a little bit more. So I want you to give it a little bit more time. So I know this is going to be hard for you to believe, but you just have to. He says that, glanced at the ground, then back up at me, or he does something. I don't actually know what's in your scene, like whether he's in a castle or, in a woods or something. I would add some part of the setting in there. I didn't have any setting to work with, so I didn't say anything. And then because it seems like it's a little bit of a romance, or at least an attraction, then let's add that and show it. He let go of my wrist. The disappearance of his touch left a palpable cavern inside of me, so that you can feel that he has let go of her. And he says, when you're awake, you don't believe me. And I added a space because we didn't have one. He paced the interior of the dark room, a room that always lingered in the shadows just out of my mind's reach. So again, you're kind of showing that this is a dream. You can tell it's a room, but how dreams are sort of fuzzy that way. And again, her conflict, I'll believe whatever you say, but even as I said the words, I wondered if they were true. This was all a dream, imaginary, right? So boom, you've got the conflict set up in her head. And then as if he read my mind, you just need a little transition to come back up to his words so that the reader can get it and understand what is going on in there. So that's what you're trying to do, is to set up that conflict with the characters and really show that contrast, which is what everybody's passages I've been doing with, is showing the contrast between the setting, what's going on in their head, and what's going on with the plot. Conflict. And a lot of times, not on everybody's, I don't think, but a lot of times I marked conflict. And if you can learn to really mark that yourself in your own books, or in the books that you read, or to see it in the movies and TV shows you watch, the ones that are really good, I don't recommend. I saw the TV Glow. It's really weird. But if you can watch something that has a lot of conflict in it, you can really see that layering in there with the characters. And you can try to write it, just the way that you see it there. I'm putting that back up because, yes, it definitely needed more. It was getting there, but it just needed those layers that I've been talking about a lot here with everybody. Cozy Mystery Writer. So the ironic thing about that workshop in Dayton, Ohio, the Irma Bombeck, was the very first conference I ever spoke at, and it was about turning that deep, dark, angsty book into a romantic comedy. That book went on to win Best Traditional Romance of the Year, and it did very, very well. Actually, it went into multiple reprints. It did very good. But my very first speaking gig on writing was at the Irma Bombeck workshop. So it's a very fond one in my mind. I don't write romantic comedy anymore, so I write little bits of comedy, but not like I did in the beginning. Paul, I love the Easter egg jokes, which are great if the reader knows it. Like, I read Stephen King, and I know that he is friends with Lee Child and a bunch of my other favorite authors. And I read all of those authors, so I can see the Easter eggs when they show up. But other people, I'm like, hey, did you see that Reacher was in Under the Dome? People are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So if the readers don't get the Easter egg jokes because they're not familiar with the other thing, then they might not be as invested. And what genres am I writing these days? So I'm still writing, not a lot, not really romance. I'm writing women's fiction and romantic suspense. And then I'm working on a different kind of suspense that is not, I have not decided what I'm going to do with it yet. It's not on contract or anything like that. I'm just working on it to see what comes out of it. So I've got a couple of romantic suspense proposals that I've got to put together. I've done, I don't know, several romantic suspense novels for HarperCollins, and I'm putting together some new proposals for that. Okay, so I also had stuff from Joel and Miss Blogger and Alicia. So if you guys are here, I would love to talk to you and ask you questions as we go along. But if you're not, I might still bring it up anyway, because I really want people to be able to learn from what was submitted to me for this section. So Elizabeth, since you came in a little bit late, I will also email it after I'm done with this, because that's too much multitasking for one person. And Cozy Mystery Writer. Okay, so Alicia, right? Yes. How would I define women's lit? It always confuses me. So women's lit, half a mo, is the focus. How you define a genre is that more than 50% of the book is focused on that genre specific kind of thing. So in a suspense novel, more than 50% of the book is dedicated to the suspense plot. In a romance, more than 50% of the plot is dedicated to the romance. In a women's fiction, more than 50% of the plot is dedicated to the woman's journey. So what Martha was writing is more of like a women's fiction, I think it's a short story, is more about her journey than, you know, a car chase or solving a mystery or whatever else. It's more about the woman kind of figuring out her life and herself and all of that. So, and I do actually really love writing those. A couple of these, they're outside of the camera view, but a couple of these over here are them. And one of the two banned books were women's fiction, so I'm pretty proud of that. All right, let's do Alicia. Okay, bring this up. So Alicia's got this great cozy mystery plot, and I'm getting there, guys. I'm getting there. Wrong way. There we go. It's a great cozy mystery, and she wanted a first impression of the opening paragraph and how to tighten it up. So I love this little town that you had. I actually lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana for, I'll tell you a second, Martha. I actually lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana for like 14 too many years. So I knew that I've been around a lot of Amish communities and stuff like that. Did not really like Fort Wayne, Indiana that much, but I come from Boston, so that was a big cultural shock for me. But I did recognize what you were talking about in here. But let's show it just a little bit more. So I love the little village that you've created in here. And I would add a bit more Amishness to this, because most of the world is not familiar with the Amish type life, right? Like they've heard about it, but they don't really see it. So let's see it. You know, a horse clop clop down the street, pulling a carriage driven by a man in a handmade blue shirt and high-waisted dark pants. Two children peeked out of the back of the carriage, staring at the stranger. Because I know anytime I went anywhere that was in an Amish community, they were like, ooh, what's that lady in the car doing there? And then let's set up the conflict with the place. I wasn't a stranger, but there were times when I felt like one in this place. 5 years changed a person a lot. So that just drops in the backstory a teeny tiny little bit. And the backstory is triggered by the people looking at her like she's a stranger. That's what I mean about just not randomly throwing in history. It needs to be triggered by an event in the plot. And then you can kind of morph into her history of her career. No matter where I'd gone in the world as a wine and travel writer, nothing compared to this village of 800. A wave of nostalgia swelled in my chest as I crossed the street and headed for the square. because I don't think that she would go on and on about her own past and her own stuff. Like, I had my podcast, I had this, I had that. I just don't think that most of us think about ourselves in our heads like that. So you did add too much in that part, but you didn't add enough of what needed to be in there, if that makes sense. So I know you want to get all this on the page, who she is and everything else. I think it'd be way cooler if instead, and I did not write this in, I ran out of time this week, guys. If instead you brought in another character. You could have this really like little nosy old lady or little old man that comes up to her and is just like, oh my gosh, are you so-and-so I listened to your podcast, and you can really show the town that way. Like, it's a really small town. So maybe she talks about like these really exotic destinations with these really amazing bottles of wine. And this is a place that has a Trader Joe's, and they're buying the $3 chuck, right? So you could have somebody come up and really show those differences, the juxtaposition of the two worlds, and be like, oh, I listened to your podcast, but we can't get any of that fancy wine here. Like, that is not what we have here. Let's really show the juxtaposition between the two things. And I don't know how you ever got, traveled the world like that. Show the things that you know from your history too. Like, when I lived in Fort Wayne, I used to travel all the time because I spoke a lot. This was before COVID. And I actually had grown adults that were in like their 50s and 60s be like, you went to New York City by yourself? Like it was, the back end of San Quentin or something. I'm like, yeah, it's totally cool to go by yourself. Like, just don't look like a tourist and you'll be fine. Nobody's going to mug you. Don't run around New York City at 3 a.m. by yourself. That would be stupid. So those kinds of weird little conversations that I had with people would make it into books sometimes, because that would make that area come to life. I've written a lot of books that were set both in Indiana and in Massachusetts, which is where I've lived over my life before I moved to Florida, in little small towns. And all those little elements of a small town, that's what I ended up adding in there. So it felt like it. So if you can bring in another character that sort of shows what the small town is like and what the small town thinks of her, and allows you to bring in her past, then we can kind of set it up a little bit more. That gives the setting more of a life, and the setting is so vital to this mystery that you have, which, by the way, I thought it was a great setup for the cozy mystery. I really loved your little blurb. It was really well written and very clear, and I loved it and would love to read that because it sounds really fun. I love cozy mysteries. So that was really, really well done. But let's bring this town and these people to life a little bit more. Yes, have the contract shown in another person's view. Yes, have everything shown, not necessarily, yes, the contrast shown in another person's view. You're not going to switch points of view. You're going to stay in her point of view, but just the way that people talk to her. You know what I mean? Like, this story is on one of my videos, and so it's not a big surprise to most of you, but when I went to high school, when I went back to my high school to visit my high school teachers, one of them said to me, you will never make a living writing those fluff books. And it's a shame that you're using your talent for that. And when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame there, which was kind of a petty thing for me, but to go back and be like, there's my picture on the wall. But that kind of, that small town judgment of what you do for a living is so alive and well. I was pretty hurt by that. Like, my whole dream, my whole life was to be a writer. And I did not consider the books that I put my heart and soul into to be fluff. And to have somebody say, you're never going to make a living at that. Why would you waste your talent? I have never seen the books that I write as a waste of my talent. When you have somebody that writes to you and says, hey, it made me laugh when I was going through chemo, or hey, this was what got me through this really difficult period of my life, or hey, thank you for giving me a respite from the stresses of my world. That tells you that the books that you write are important to other people. So they absolutely should be treated with respect, because they're hard work. You guys all know, you can see it is hard work to write a really good book. And so doing that is an important job, and doing it well is even more important, because this is somebody's time and life. And yes, I've had a couple moments in my career where I've had a little bit of pettiness, but for the most part, I am very grateful for my career. I'm very much about, and this is my whole attitude with the channel and everything that I have created here, I'm all about, I don't want to get to the top of my career and be all by myself. A ladder is much more fun to climb with somebody coming up with you. And so my goal has always been to help other people come up the ladder that I've been climbing. And if they surpass me, great. They have company when I get to the top. And if they don't, I'm happy to have helped them to where they go. It's never any fun to get to the top of your career. And I wouldn't consider myself at the top of my career, but to get to that point and be by yourself. So it's absolutely on all of us that have knowledge to share it, because otherwise, why did we get it all? Just to keep it to ourselves. So I want to share as much as I can with you guys and help you as much as I can. Hence the course. I also do have to pay my mortgage though. So, I do charge for some things because I do have a mortgage to pay, but there is a significant number of free resources out there. So great job, Cozy Mystery Writer, and everybody else. Let me see who else I had left. I had Joel and Miss Blogger. So if either of you are here, just let me know, because I wanted to work on those two too, but I don't want to bring them up if you guys aren't here. So nice to see you here, Cheryl. And by the way, yes, guys, I do live, sorry, half of them I keep forgetting about the microphone. I do live in Florida. The entire area a mile or two away from me is completely devastated. We are luckily about 6 miles inland, and I think my husband said we're at 45 feet elevation, which is like a mountain in Florida. So we were very fortunate at our particular house to not have that much damage, but all of the places that are my favorite places to go to in this area in the Tampa Bay are just gone. It's just devastating. So, and if you guys are in Atlanta, I am going on tomorrow, no, the day after tomorrow, Wednesday, I am driving to Atlanta to go speak at the Moonlight and Magnolias conference in Atlanta at the Norcross Hotel. I don't remember what it's called. Maybe it's a Marriott. Anyways, the Norcross Hotel. And I'll be speaking about writing point of view. So if you are there, please come up and say hi to me, and maybe we could do a quick little thing for the channel, or I'd at least like to get to know you guys in person if any of you are there at the conference. I'm also going to have some giveaways from the channel for some things that I created just for the channel. Not as many giveaways as I had hoped, because the hurricane totally disrupted the shipping, so most of what I ordered will not be here until the day after I leave, so no good to me. And yes, I am very grateful that Helene spared us, and yeah, I went through Irma here, and Irma did not spare where I lived. It was terrible. Irma was terrible. This is like my fifth or sixth hurricane here, and this was by far the worst, and it never even directly hit us, but it was scary. It really was scary. So my heart goes out to everybody in North Carolina and Georgia and Florida and all of those places, Tennessee, everywhere that got hit, and it's just underwater. It's just so sad. Okay, so Ms. Blogger and Joel aren't here, so I don't want to do those two, because those are ones that I had questions on before I could share them. So if you submitted and I didn't get to it, that's because I didn't have time. And so feel free to submit. Is that the link? Yeah. To submit for next time, which will be in 2 weeks. I don't know the date off the top of my head. I'm sure one of you guys can look at a calendar, so I don't have to multitask. You really want to get the 200 words in as early as possible, so I have a moment to think about it, because anybody that does the manuscript masterminds with me or the author coaching with me knows that I put a lot of time into just literally thinking about what you're doing and how to approach it, because a lot of you guys are writing genres that I don't regularly write. I've written almost every genre, but I don't regularly write them, so I really want to think about how best to approach what you're doing. And what about a fantasy fairy tale novel? What is emphasized in that? It's the fantasy world, the fantasy storyline. Like if you look at Rings of Power, which is what we're watching, the storyline about the rings and creating them and what it's going to do to Middle Earth is more than 50% of the plot. There's other stuff going on. There's like a dad and a father that are arguing, a father and a son that are arguing about him being in the military and him joining the naval fleet place. I do not know the terms. Don't come for me. I watch it, I love the show, but I don't know the names of the places or the people because I'm not that familiar with the terminology. But there's the relationships between parents and kids or people that are together and all of that going on. But more than 50% of the plot in Rings of Power is about the fantasy elements. These cool rings out of Mithra and whatever they make them with and how they're going to change Middle Earth. So when you look at something like that, you can see how the majority of the plot, that's what makes it a fantasy fairy tale. And you guys are welcome, Elizabeth and Joe and Alicia. I very much appreciate you guys coming and being here. And if you don't write romance, please share the little QR code or the image. You can email me or ask me for it on the channel. I'd be very happy if people shared it. Because my goal, as I've said before, is to help 500,000 writers write better books, because then we'd have 500,000 more great books to read, and I really want more books to read. And the publishing industry likes me very much. I buy a lot of real books. I'm not a big Kindle fan. I buy a lot of real books. So I would love to help more writers write better. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate all of you, and we will not have a Friday writing sprint because I am gone to Georgia from Wednesday through Sunday. Tomorrow we will have a writing sprint at 1 o'clock, the career writer sprint, where we'll talk career stuff rather than just writing questions. So that's the only other writing sprint we will have this week, tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. So thank you guys for being here, and I will see some of you hopefully tomorrow, and I'll email everybody that submitted right after this ends. So thank you, and I will see you guys later.